Can we just... Oh, thank you. I heard that recording is in progress. So thank you. As you're joining the webinar, thank you for being here. Can you just post in the chat where you are joining us from? Love to hear and see where everybody's from. Joining from Kingston, Jamaica. Fantastic, Ron. Welcome.
Welcome, everyone. This is so exciting. So many people already joining us. Keep it coming. Where are you joining us from? So, Pablo, where are you joining us from today?
So I am sitting in Langley, British Columbia, just a little city or little town close to Vancouver.
Very
nice.
nice.
How are you, Miriam? Where are you joining?
I'm joining you all from Northern Virginia in the outskirts of Washington, D.C. So really excited to be here.
Fantastic. Awesome. So we're at the top of the hour. So why don't we get started now? So first of all, welcome everybody. As you join, I've said this again, just tell us where you're joining us from. And for those of you that are familiar with our webinars, welcome back. For those of you that are new, again, thank you for joining us. A little bit about us. This webinar is hosted by the International Coaching Group, which is also known as Coaching Out of the Box. We are a coaching educator company. We've trained over 35,000 students over the last couple of decades. And we are always striving to meet and stay with the standards of the ICF, the International Coaching Federation. My name is Pablo Leites. I am the president here at Coaching Out of the Box in the International Coaching Group. And I am moderating here the webinar today. So before we start, I'd like to draw your attention to two things. One is we have the chat on one end, and the other one is we have the questions, Q&As. So if you've got a question either for me or for Miriam, please make sure you put your question in the Q&A section and not on the live chat, because the live chat tends to get lost, okay? Even though we've got Stephanie and Hallie helping us today, please post your questions at any time in the Q&A, and also you're welcome to put in the chat, okay? Okay, so without further ado, I would like to introduce our guest speaker, our key speaker, Miriam. And today's subject matter is going to be about exploring the rise of coaching. Okay, and so this is a webinar focused on what's been happening with the rise. Where has it been such a rise in this industry? So first of all, let me introduce our guest speaker, Miriam, and I'm going to destroy your last name here, Miriam, and I apologize. And so Miriam her full name is Miriam Guerrerook. Did I say that right, Miriam? Yeah.
Chuck, almost.
Chuck,
Miriam Guerrerook, Chuck.
Yeah. So Miriam is a master certified coach with the International Coaching Federation. So just for the new, or the people that are not coaches or the new to coaching, she holds the highest accreditation possible with the ICF. Okay. She's the owner of Empowerment Coaching MCLLC. She has been coaching professionally since 2007 and has worked with clients from various industries, including banking, information technology, startups, and large corporations. And I'm just going to go back to the slide here, and I'll let you talk a little bit about, Miriam, you know, what is the areas that you're focusing the most these days? What's your focus as far as the coaching side is? Real quick.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me today. I'm really excited. I'm seeing who is attending, and I know I see a lot of familiar faces. So excited to be having this time with all of you. My specialization would be leadership, executive coaching, as well as instructional coaching. I'm really passionate about assisting leaders in developing their full potential. And I feel like everybody is a leader. So that gives you a lot of amplitude with who I really work with. I also am a coach educator. I see some of my students here today. So I'm really thankful that they took the time to support me today. And I also work as a mentor coach and assessor. So as you know, when people are going through the accreditation process, which is not an easy one, and you have different levels of accreditation, the ACC, the PCC, and finally the MCC, you have to work with a mentor coach. And then also you have to have an assessor a lot of times that assesses some of the recordings. So I do that. I do provide feedback in alignment with the ICF competencies. And definitely I am dedicated to assisting my clients gain clarity, confidence, and awareness. I feel like for peak performance, you really need to ensure that you have a sounding board. And as the highest you go in organizations, the more difficult it is to be able to have somebody that you can really talk to. And the coaching skills are very specific skills that really help you gain a lot of clarity and confidence in your role.
Thanks, Miriam. I appreciate that. Now, there's one piece here that I think we're leaving out that's really, really important about you. And we haven't spoken, you and I, much about this, but I know this about you. And that is you're not just an MCC coach, but can you just share with me and with us your personal experience on how did you get to be what was the path from starting your career as a coach and getting your MCC certification? Because I know you have something there that is pretty rare that I wanted people to know about this.
All right. Well, and also I want to invite everybody, if you have any questions, something that you might want to know about me, my own journey, even though every journey is a little different, please put it in the Q&A and I'll be happy to look at it, what questions there might be. And if we have enough time, I'm happy to answer those questions. But basically, being an internal coach kind of fell on my lap. It wasn't something that I was seeking. I can't say that when I was growing up, I said to myself, I want to be a professional coach. That was never part of some of the decisions. I thought I was going to be an attorney. I thought I was going to be a doctor. I never thought I was going to become a professional coach. But really, now looking back, I realized I was really passionate about unlocking people's full potential. I love to listen. I love to ask a lot of questions. I was very, very curious when I was young. And people used to tell me, now that I think back, people used to tell me, Miriam, you ask so many questions, so many good questions. I really think one day you're either going to be a journalist or an attorney or something because you have a lot of curiosity. And one thing about me, I never lost that curiosity. And I think in every conversation, I really brought that curiosity with me. So when the internal coaching position came on my, fell on my lap, I realized that I really needed to refine my skills. So then I decided that it was important for me to gain as much knowledge, disposition, and skills as possible to be the best version of myself for my clients. And so that's really how it all happened. I was in the human resources and talent development field. I had taught at the college level, also at the secondary level, and then I was given the opportunity to become an internal coach. And really at that time, I really didn't know what exactly that was supposed to look like. So ever since that day, I was on a quest on becoming the best version that I could be for the people that I serve. And even now that I have attained the MCC, I can't say that I have reached a destination. That's just a milestone, one more milestone in the milestones of learning. I am an avid learner. I continue to refine my skills because you had never arrived. And if somebody ever thinks that they have arrived in coaching, that is really problematic. Because with so much change is the only constant. And with so much change, if you're not constantly refining your skills, you might not be the best version to really serve your clients.
Thank you. Thanks, Miriam. So we're going to dig a little deeper as you answer that, but thank you. And my question is more around, because I know you went from 0 to 100 very fast. It's rare that somebody goes that quickly to become an MCC. So that's what I was trying to get to a little bit, and maybe share with us, what motivated you to become an MCC and be so fast. And I don't want to touch, as I said, I don't want to touch too much on that because that's our next webinar. But specifically with you, there's something there that is pretty rare that I wonder if you can share that with us.
Well, I see myself as a learner. So once I knew that having the accreditation would give me the credibility that I needed to work with many organizations, with the government, etc., I just realized, why not? So I got my ACC. The following year, I went for my PCC, and then 2 years later, I got my MCC. So for me, I feel like all my life, all the skills, all the learning that I had done really, was easy, because then I just had to put it together in the way that I was expected for the ACC level and the PCC level and finally the MCC level. And I just had that passion to ensuring that I would attain the highest level possible, not only for myself, but also for the people that I serve.
Thank you. Yeah. So what I'm hearing is that you went from ACC to MCC in, is it 3 years, 3 or 4 years? Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So all I want to, point out is that is pretty rare for somebody to go from 0 to 100 in such a short time. And that's what really for me stands out and it's for me a testament of your dedication and how focused you can be. And it's an example. It's an example for people that want to really go to that level, right? So thank you. Anyways, so I'm just going to jump into the next slide here and jump right into what the webinar is all about, which is why has coaching become such a phenomenon in the last few years? And I'll let you talk to this slide. We talked about this, and I'll let you talk to this slide. Okay.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I want to start with a definition of coaching, because we might have a lot of people that don't have the background in coaching. So I want to frame it. Here you have the definition from the ICF, the International Coaching Federation, that really defines coaching as partnering. So it is a partnership. I like to say that it's a thinking partnership. And you see my definition below is something collaborative, and it's a thinking partnership. And so apart from that partnership, what you do during that partnership is really enable a process that you allow the client to be able to think for themselves, because we believe that our clients are whole, resourceful, and capable. So that's the premise, right? And so with the power of pausing, paraphrasing, and pausing questions that are powerful, you're really allowing the person to come up with their own solutions. And it's a creative process because there's no script. So you might have a lot of frameworks and a lot of tools that you learn, but it's not something scripted. It really comes from actively listening, and it's thought-provoking. And then eventually the person realizes things about themselves that they didn't know coming into the conversation. So there's many different types of conversations. I like to say that some conversations might be planning conversations, maybe perhaps of the future. Other conversations might be reflective conversations where they have to think about something that has happened. And another type of conversation could be problem-resolving conversation. So all that, people come to sessions with a topic at hand that they want to discuss. And the importance to remember is that the coach doesn't tell. The coach asks questions that really unlocks and mediates the thinking of the person for them to realize what is it that they want and need. And I think what is also very important to talk about is in coaching, we don't stay on the surface. So on the surface means people might tell me something, but I'm looking at the nonverbals. The nonverbals, we know that really conveys more messaging than what it is the verbal, that the words that the people actually say. So we always want to explore what is below the surface. And below the surface are the feelings, are the goals, are the mindsets, are the assumptions, are the beliefs, are the values. So really is what I call the deep structure. That's where you want to get to. And as you realize, coaching, it is an in-depth conversation. So really it's not a surface level conversation. It's a conversation where you're really able to be vulnerable. You're really able to be yourself. And of course, for that, it is required that you create a safe space for people to have that kind of conversation.
Beautiful. Thank you. And so as you were saying that, Miriam, what came to my mind was what do you feel is the difference between coaching and counseling? Let's say why would I, if I was doing personally, if I wanted to go either to counseling or coaching, how would you define the difference? What would you say one is? I'm not saying that one is better than the other. I think they're very different. But I'd love to hear from you. What do you see as the main difference between the two?
Yeah, thank you for asking that. So it is a continuum of support. So different people might need different things. For example, coaching is something that as the coach, you don't tell people what to do. You ask questions and you go with their agenda. You don't have your own agenda, right? So you're in service to them. In counseling, sometimes it's more about like they might ask questions. So here's the thing that I think people get confused between all the different hats that somebody might be able to wear or the different services that might be provided to people. It really depends what the client needs. So a therapist or a counselor sometimes is really about resolving. So for example, a therapist might be something more in the past. So I like to talk about how sometimes in therapy is more like archaeologist, like you're really exploring the past. Perhaps there is trauma, big T or a small T trauma. That doesn't mean that in coaching, you don't have coaching informed practices. In counseling, you might go and then they might counsel you if you have maybe anxiety or if you have something specific. There might be counselors specific to a realm that you might need, but it really depends what you feel you might need, right? Coaching is a thinking partnership. So people come to really reflect in the way they think, because I think sometimes people don't realize that the way we think is connected to the way we feel. So how we feel is connected to how we think and also how we behave. So if you ever want to change some of your behaviors, it really has to start with your thinking. So everything is connected. And so you really have to peel the layers of the onion to better understand, why am I, why do I have these behaviors? Why am I reactive versus responding? So I guess what I'm trying to say is there is a continuum of support, the way I see it. And really it's based on the client, what they feel that they might need. Coaching is present to future. And it is all about mediating people's thinking to make sure that they gain awareness, new insights, and that really allows with not only peak performance, but also when you feel better, if you have a personal issue and because here's another thing that I don't think people realize. We are connected. The whole approach to humans is we are connected. Our personal lives and our professional lives are connected. So when people are experiencing difficulty in their personal lives, a lot of times they bring that into the workplace. So in coaching, even if you're coaching at a workplace, sometimes people might bring up what's really causing them to feel anxious or stressed. So that's okay, but that is kind of sometimes part of the coaching is we acknowledge emotions, and we acknowledge content, and we're able to ask questions to really help them think more clearly about some of the decisions that they might have to make.
Fantastic, thank you. So would you say that, from my personal perspective, what I've seen is counseling is more about becoming aware of the feelings, becoming aware of the issues, and would you say then coaching is more about helping the individual find their own answers and have a plan and create a plan they create the plan together for a potential result. Would you say that is that kind of in line, you think?
It is definitely co-created. So anything that we do in coaching is a collaboration, is a partnership, is co-created. We service the client, they have awareness, right? And once we've evoked awareness, we really help them design a plan, an action plan to move forward. Either to move forward with something that they've gained as an insight. It could be tangible or not tangible necessarily, but something like how might they implement that in the future? So, and then we explore like what might be some obstacles, what might be some support that they might need, what is their commitment level. So I think of coaching as a bridge.
Fantastic.
And if you think of a bridge, you have an existing state, which is where currently the client might be, and then you have a desired state. And so our role as a coach is to assist them gain clarity from their existing state to their desired state, and what might be some strategies or a pathway to get them there. And for that, you have to understand why are they, what is the reasoning behind they are the where they, right now they have that existing state, and what do they want as a goal, and what might be some tools or strategies to support that they might need to attain their goal.
Fantastic. Thank you, Miriam. So I want to take it back into a couple different directions here. One is to shift things a bit, okay? One is I'd love to see in the chat, if you can put, if you are new to coaching, we'd love to hear and see if this is new to you, if it's a new subject matter. And so please post in the chat if you're new to coaching. The second shift I want to make is just to go back a little bit to the reason why we're here, and which is why do you think coaching has become increasingly popular in the last few years? What do you think is happening, or what's the phenomenon that's happened in the last few years that's made coaching so not, I don't want to say successful, but it's become kind of top of mind for many people. And I also, after that, I've got a few statistics that I love to tell people or share with people. Okay, but I'll let you talk about that first.
Yeah, well, basically, coaching has become so popular because people have realized the benefits. Coaching is job embedded professional development. And so when you have job embedded professional development, and job embedded professional development is not a one-time event. It's very important to remember. It has to be a sequence. Because I hear often organizations say, well, we provided the training. I'm not understanding why people are not implementing it. Well, it is because a one-time event doesn't really, cause the, the effect that you want. So it's like a domino effect. People have to feel resourceful. People have to have the craftsmanship. People have to feel comfortable trying something new and be able to fail. And some organizations might not be congruent. They might say one thing, but then they don't see failure as something to applaud, right? Because of the high stakes. So obviously having a coaching culture is important. I think more organizations are realizing that if we hire talented individuals, then we should believe in them and we should not micromanage, and we should be given the autonomy to do what they need to do, because and so on that part of the coaching process is allowing people to clarify their thinking in terms of decisions or things that they want to implement, or even how to have difficult conversations with employees. That also helps in the space of coaching. You can really have a dialogue about, how might you approach those things. So their workplace, perhaps they had not have always felt heard or listened to. And when we listen to people, they feel valued.
Mm-hmm. So what I'm hearing is that, do you think, if you talk about the corporate world for a second, do you feel that managers or team members are realizing that there's a different way of doing things, there's a different way of communicating to connect with each other better and actually get, if you're talking about the corporate world, it's all about results and it's all about the bottom line. But end of the day, it's people that run these organizations. And the better the communication and the better the atmosphere within the organizations, then things get done in a more efficient way. So it kind of, so what I heard when you said that is people understanding there's a way to communicate that is not me telling, hey, Miriam, go and do this. Instead of saying, hey, Miriam, do you think there's a way that we can do this better? And what would that look like? Is that kind of resonate?
Yeah, I mean, coaching is a space for reflection, right? And so we make better decisions when we reflect. And research talks about how just reflecting in your head is not the most beneficial. That's why journaling helps, or even talking to someone that really is utilizing the coaching skills. And the coaching skills is having a lot of intentionality about the way you listen. Now, another thing I might say in organizations, organizations more and more now, they're realizing that they have to be human-centric, meaning we need to make sure that we fulfill the social needs of people's brains. And if you're familiar with David Rock's research, he talks about the SCARF model. And so if I may, I might just put it on the table. So the SCARF model has to do that people really need to feel like there is collaboration. So hierarchy status is something that maybe shuts people down. So they might not be able to speak up if they feel, oh, there's a status. Even if I have a different idea in a meeting, I might not be able to voice it because I'm scared. I feel threatened that maybe, I'm colliding with like maybe what my higher ups are saying, but I have the expert knowledge. So status is one of the things that is important for people to realize that shuts people in terms of their thinking and collaboration and communication. The second thing is certainty. Sometimes we have so many changes. I mean, change is the only constant. So people really need to navigate change in a conscious way, knowing that people have ambiguity. There is a tension between certainty and ambiguity. So there has to be a balance as we change. How do we change it in a way that people can have buy-in, right? and be with us. So that's another layer that is important to remember. And that goes together with coaching is a communication skill. That's how I want to see it. So a lot of leaders that use communication skills, like coaching skills, really benefit in the way that they're communicating. And when we communicate more effectively, people feel safer and people feel like there's more certainty. That's why transparency in communication is important, because it gives people certainty. Another layer of the SCARF model is the relatedness. People need to have the experience that people care about themselves, not only because of the value they provide at the workplace, but also because they value them as individuals, right? So they can bring their full selves without any judgment and discrimination, and people value that. And that's how it makes us really, work better with others. And that is the interconnection with other people. And so that's important as well. And fairness. I mean, how many people leave organizations where they feel like, I don't feel like there is fairness, right? So fairness is another component that it's very important to be mindful in organizations as we think of navigating change. And with coaching skills, you really have better ways to communicate because you understand people, you paraphrase not only their emotion, but also the content. You ask questions, you're curious. So when you use coaching skills, you might ask your employees, how are you feeling about this new initiative? What might be some ways that we can navigate this uncertainty with the different teams? So you can also gather input from your employees. As we know, when we gather input from others, there's more likely to be buy-in. But not only because I care, but also I will use that input. I think the worst that you can do as a leader is ask for input and never use it.
Interesting. So what I'm hearing is that it's a different way. The big image that came to mind as you were saying that, Miriam, is people like to be seen and heard, right? And so coaching can open up that space around how can this person be seen and show, not only show value, but feel that they're bringing value to the either, like you said it as an example, whether it's a change, a system, whatever's being implemented. So a couple of things. One is there's a comment here from Renee Paul saying, coaching gives us time to reflect deeply in a too busy surface world, right? So that's powerful. Thank you for putting that, Renee Paul. Because yeah, how do we take a moment to be heard? And one of the big things with coaching is when we go through the coaching process and even in the teaching process, is how this question comes up a lot, or this comment comes up a lot, is how many times do you actually get full attention from somebody for 20 minutes or 30 minutes or an hour, right? And actually somebody being fully present and helping you through whatever that, through whatever you want to talk about at that moment. And I think that's very powerful. Couple things, statistics. Harvard Business Review research concludes that coaching boosts productivity by 44%, while an ICF commission study claims that coaching clients report a median ROI of 788%, right? So these are significant numbers, right? The number of Google searches for coach is up 70%. Coaching is no longer regarded as a peripheral activity. Instead, it is essential to many lives and careers. McAlpine adds, as mental health issues continue to rise, the demand for coaching increases. And this is from the Harvard review. So it's now, there's no question about coaching, right? And so let's shift a little bit here. And we've talked a lot about the organizations. What if we shift a little bit to the personal, right? What's happening with people, just the individuals, right? Individuals, either wanting to become coaches or individuals looking for coaching. I can tell you from the side of coaching out of the box, we're seeing a huge increase in individuals that are coming to us that are either they're finishing their careers, they're moving into a transition period, and they got all these years of experience. What do they do now, right? I coach with somebody once a week about this, and this is a gentleman that comes from a Fortune 500 company. He's got tons of experience, and he took the course of coaching and is now looking at this. And can you talk a little bit about that? What's happening in that space?
Mm-hmm. And I also would love to have our attendees here today, put it in the chat. What brought you to this webinar? What is it about coaching that interests you? And so my point of view in terms of why people are now more interested in coaching at the personal level is that once you've experienced coaching, now very important that is coaching by an accredited coach, because there's a lot of people nowadays that they call themselves coach. But, there's a difference in terms of the toolkit that actual accredited coaches, for example, with International Coaching Federations use versus a coach that maybe they call themselves a coach, but they're actually consultant. So I would just invite people to really have a coaching session, and then they can truly see the value and the experience of what that might mean for them. And I think at a personal level, being able to be listened to matters. I think with the busyness of people's lives, just think of yourself, of when you're talking to even with other people, even take that inventory for yourself. Do you actually have the intentionality, even with your own kids, to put devices down, to look them in the eye, no matter how busy you might be, even if it is in the morning, you're rushing for everybody to get on the bus on time or, arrive in school on time. Do you actually just stop for a moment and realize, okay, yes, we got to make the time commitments of everything, but really maybe they need to just be listened to. So I think it's very important to realize the power of being listened. I think it is really intentionality. There's not necessarily an art. I mean, there is an art, but I think a lot of times paying that attention to others by actively listening, and listening means to be able to tell back the person what they have said in the essence of what they said. The worst that you can do is parrot back, because it's like, yeah, I said that. You don't have to parrot back. You can just give me the essence. But I find that communicating with people in a way that you listen to them and you ask questions to really that they go deeper than what they're saying, it really makes a big difference. I think one conversation can change people's lives. I'm a big believer on that. You never know how one conversation can change people's lives. I've had plenty, and for me, I have a lot of intentionality about ensuring that when people talk to me, either I'm in the line of the supermarket or any space, that I just bring my best self, that I'm warm, that I'm caring, that I listen, no matter, what they might be saying, or even if they're complaining, I might just nod and say, oh, so you're feeling frustrated. You must be on a time crunch. Perhaps you want to go in front of me. I mean, so you just never know how kindness with listening can make a powerful impact on people. I've had plenty of people telling me, wow, it was so nice talking to you. and it is because you are intentional about being in the moment, being present for others. So the coaching space can allow you to really talk about maybe your vision of self. It's unfortunate, but a lot of times, too often that I can count, I have people that tell me, you know what, Miriam, if I had more autonomy or control over some of the choices that I have made in my life, I probably would have done another career. So a lot of times people come, at a point of their life where maybe they've retired and now, or they transition like you were talking about earlier, and all of a sudden now they're trying to figure out what they're truly passionate about. Where's their ikigai? What's their purpose? What's the strength that they might have? What might be their contribution to the world? And they're looking at, they want to figure out now, perhaps in an advanced, age of their life. And it's okay. It's never too late. But I think imagine if we provided more autonomy and the power of, it's okay to make your own decisions in life without being influenced by others, or feeling like you are compelled to make a decision as to what might be your career because of your parents or because something else. Sometimes looking inwards and realizing what would make me happy, I think it's important. Of course, you have to self-sustain yourself, right? But what I'm saying is, it's interesting to me that a lot of people are seeking happiness, but happiness comes for being congruent with what you truly value. So you won't really work a day in your life if what you're doing is something you're passionate about.
No, there's so much to what you just said that it excites me. I want to just share a few things that you said that are really, really important. One is and I know we have a question here from Cynthia. So Cynthia, we'll get to your question in a second, okay? But I just want to finish what you're saying, Miriam, which is really important for me. You talked about taking the time sometimes to listen, to be for that person in whatever example it can be. And I think our tendency, I'll give you an example. I've got an 8-year-old son. We just took a trip. We came back with a toy he just brought from the trip, and he broke it. He stepped on it and he broke it, and it became a big tantrum. He was very sad. So my immediate kind of program reaction was, I got to fix this. I got to go get him a new toy, right? But then I was able to take a step back for a second and say, all he needs right now is empathy. He just needs to be heard. He just wants me to be with him in his pain versus me trying to fix it. And I think that's one of the big things that I learned through coaching is take a second, take a step back, just have some empathy. So you sparked that when you were talking about that, that's so important. That's one of the, I'm going to say it's one of the coaching tools that we can get through this process, right? That's one. Yeah, so that came up for me in a big way.
Thank you. No, and you bring up a really good point. We are really wired to be fixers and problem solvers in a way that almost, if you ever had a conversation with someone, you're trying to tell a story and somebody else might be giving their autobiography. Oh, that happened to me. And then they interrupt the whole listening, right? And now they want to interject their own story. So it's very important to remember that a lot of times just giving the space for people to be able to express what they have to express and to be the spotlight on them and not like include that listening set aside where you're only now hijacking the whole conversation and now you are just going in autobiography and telling them, oh, that happened to me. Let me tell you about, no, it's not about you. Somebody else is telling you that, their story. Listen, be in the moment. And so I love the fact that it sounds like coaching skills have also made you a better dad in the sense that now you know that what your son really needed is to, be there with him in the moment, give him, and be empathetic in the way you expressed. And just be there with him. And, the fixing could even be in asking him a question. Once he's come down, be able to ask him, what do you think we might be able to do? What feels comfortable? And he might even say, oh, I can just tape it. And he had just an accident. And, now he has a new self, right? So you just never know the power, because I think the solutions that we might have for people are never the solutions that they need. Let me say that again. The person that has the most experience about someone's life is always the person that is their life, right? So me trying to insert a solution to someone else's life, it doesn't even help. So the best way for people to figure out what they need out of their lives, it's internal. So ask them questions that really brings to the surface what might be a solution or how they might want to come about that dilemma that they have on hand. So very, very important. So thank you for sharing that story about your son.
Thanks, Miriam. Okay, so there's a question from Cynthia. It says, could you please explain the difference between consulting and coaching? Mm-hmm. So I think that's a really good question, right? It's a little bit about the question that I asked around counseling versus coaching. But again, consulting is another big one, right?
Yeah, and consulting, when we think of a consultant, hiring a consultant, we think of hiring an expert. Now, the expertise of a consultant might be in a particular field. So when I hire somebody, I'm expecting them to give me solutions to my problem, right? And I'm seeing them as an expert, and I'm seeing perhaps myself as a novice in that sense. Now, in coaching, I see the expert, the client is the expert of their own life. I am only the expert of how to mediate people's thinking, which is having coaching tools. So knowing about brain research, right? The neuroscience, to know that I'm going to ask the right questions and I'm going to acknowledge, and I'm also going to notice the nonverbals. And when I see an incongruence between the nonverbals, or when I think there is more behind, then I'm going to ask a question around it. Oh, I'm noticing that when you say that you're changing jobs, it didn't sound like your nonverbals, you were not that excited about it. Maybe I'm wrong, but what is coming up for you when I mentioned that? So sometimes just asking questions. So the big difference between consulting and coaching is coaching, the methodologies, we don't see ourselves as experts in the field, in what the topic that they're at hand that they're bringing. Whereas a consultant, they're normally hired for their expertise. So maybe they're doing more telling than asking. Very important to remember that people can still utilize. So a consultant could still ask questions. That doesn't make them a coach, right? They're using coaching skills as asking questions, right? But that doesn't mean that there's the only way. Normally, they might ask a question to better understand the context or the problem to solve, and then they're expected to come back with some kind of solutions, right? Or options, or many of options to solve the problem, or recommendations. Coaches never recommend people what to do, because we believe that the source of the solution, it's embedded. So it's all about asking questions for the person to really be able to gain their own awareness.
Beautiful. So let's go deeper into this. When would you, if we go back to the organization or the corporate world, when would you call a coach and when would you call in a consultant?
Okay, it really depends what the organization needs. One thing that I know for a fact is that when you have managers or leaders in the organization asking questions, it's always beneficial. Meaning, if I come in, even if I was hired for a position and I have the title and I see myself as an expert in that field, if I just come in and tell people what to do, I'm going to tell you right now, it's not going to go very well. Because there's a brain need that I was actually referring earlier with David Rock's model, that in the SCARF model, one of the needs is autonomy. So when we tell people what to do, just even think of yourself. Think of a time where you were told, Pablo, this is what you need to do. How did you feel?
I hate it.
Right. Because people have a need for autonomy. So when we're told, even in an organization, this is what you're going to do and this is how you're going to do it, it's a problem. You might be able to provide a vision. You might be able to give objectives or the outcomes of what you need, but it's problematic if you also give them the pathway to get there, because then you're providing no voice and choice. And when you take away the voice and choice of people, people are going to burn out and people are not going to be passionate about the work that they do. So autonomy is necessary. So I always say, even if you're not a coach, accredited coach, you can still use coaching skills. That's why, we also teach a lot of coaching skills to leaders, because it benefits the culture, it benefits the relationships. And like I said, it's a communication skill and people want to be asked for input. That's the best way to get buy-in, right? In collaboration. So the best organizations that I know are collaboratively. They work in collaboration, they work in teams, they cognitively challenge each other because there's a safe space, but there is that approach. So a consultant might be brought in if truly the person is stuck and maybe that's what they need. They need to be told what to do, but that is rare because most of the times people know what to do. They might just be afraid to do it. And so that's part of the coaching process, getting to the surface, getting to understand what's behind the resistance. So when people tell me, my organization is really having a hard time, they're resisting the change, I always say, well, I don't think people are resisting change. People are resisting the approach to change. I think people are being told what to do. People are giving no buy-in. Maybe perhaps they didn't give them the why. And we know from Simon Sinek, start with the why. You got to explain people the why, the what, and the how. If you don't do that, people are not going to really buy into the vision. So a lot of it is ways that we, approach change. What do people need? You need to know your audience. What do my team members need to be able to navigate their certainty of change? And telling people what to do is never the solution.
Right. It's such an interesting subject matter, Miriam. And I recently, I think it was, I heard it or I read it, about the consulting firms, the big consulting firms, the McKinseys, the Deloittes, and the article was about, I think it was the government of Canada using some of these organizations. It was Trudeau, from what I understand. They were paying them $1 million a day to do some consulting for them, and there's been a big shift for them in the sense of going towards coaching versus consulting. And the article spoke exactly about what you're saying, which is the premise was everybody already kind of knows, they know already what needs to be done. the consultant might come and give a few pointers on how to do things, but legitimately people already know the answers, right? And so there was that big push around doing the training for the internal coaches versus bringing the consultants, the external consultants. So I think it goes back to the original idea of this webinar, which is, why has this become such a phenomenon in the last, why has coaching become such a phenomenon in the last few years? Is that I think it's exactly what you talked about, is people understanding, managers understanding that the answers are already there. People know what to do. Is how do we help them become that? How do we help them do the things we want them to do? But it's coming from within. It's coming from them versus me telling them, or you telling them, or that person telling them, this is what you need to do. Does that resonate?
Yes, and it makes me think of performance evaluation conversation. It makes me feel how a lot of people always say, I want people to grow and develop. Okay, but how are you doing that? And so just telling people, this is what I want you to do, it's never the way that people are they're going to be motivated to want to grow and develop that arena in that area. So I think it goes back to the idea of knowing how to communicate effectively. And part of communicating effectively is understanding what people need and what might open them up to the feedback. So a lot of times when I hear a lot of managers saying, oh, it's interesting. I mean, my feedback conversations, they don't always go as expected. And I'm curious. And, I'm curious, what are some of the reasons behind they don't go as expected? Well, I just tell them what to do, but then like 3 weeks later, they're still not doing it. All right. So what might be some reasons that they're still, so you see what I'm saying? A lot of times people can realize how they have to pivot and be flexible in their ways, right? Without me telling them, oh, listen, this is what you should be doing. No, I want them to figure out and realize, oh, yeah, now I think I have a better way that it could help and assist people to grow and develop. And the way to do it is maybe ask them, what are some areas that maybe they feel they need to grow? And if maybe they don't identify those areas, maybe there is a third point. There's the data. What does the data say to you? What trends and patterns are you noticing on the data? What might others say in your team when they work with you? Because, everybody has bias. So not everybody, the way we perceive ourselves is how people perceives us. So that's also very interesting perspective, understanding, being self-aware. And I think coaching also helps with self-awareness. Some people don't realize how they come across. Maybe their intention is not that, but the impact is what people, and I always tell, if the impact is not a positive one, and others are saying they perceive you this way, there is some truth there. And if there's some truth there, then we need to go backwards, kind of doing that backward planning, and what might be some things we need to do. So your intention of not being perceived that way becomes that positive impact, right? So what might changes you might need to do to be perceived differently.
I love it. Yeah. And especially in the corporate world where we have to deal with either a boss or a higher level authority. That's when things can get, we tend to lose ourselves. There is a question that I just want to, I think it's been taken away from what I understand. It's not there anymore. Here it is. Here it is. Yeah. Do you see that? I'll read it to you. It says, what are some tips on the bookends of a coaching session, the initial agreement and facilitating client growth specifically? So do you understand that?
Yes. So basically they're asking what's the structure of a coaching conversation other than trying to reach an agreement, and then also how to, once the awareness has been evoked, then the action planning. But for that, I will say there's many different frameworks. 555, we have one in Coaching Out of the Box. So we would invite that person because it might be a lot we only have like 12 minutes left of this webinar. So that might be a lot to really discuss, but there's many different frameworks. And also I think the best source as well would be for the person to go and see the competencies. The coaching competencies gives you a lot of information as to what is expected in a coaching conversation, and in terms of the coaching mindset, in terms of evoking awareness, maintaining presence, wrapping up a session, what is necessary. So I know that might not fully answer the question, but that sounds like a future webinar. So maybe we can take note of that.
Absolutely. Thanks, Miriam. So there's one, I know we have a few minutes left here, but there's one question that I want to talk about. Excuse me. And so this question is more around, and I'm gonna go to a saying in Spanish, which deals with bars and going to the bar. So that means, so when things are bad, you go to the bar and drink, and when things are good, you go to the bar and celebrate, right? So you're going back and forth to the bar no matter what, basically. And I make that distinction or that comparison to coaching, right? And so the question is, how can coaching be beneficial to individuals and organizations during the periods of change, right? So sometimes there's good things going on, sometimes they're not things going on, yet can coaching be still relevant in either situation?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, I love the quote. I can understand it. Well, for those of you who don't know, I also speak Spanish. And, and I'm sure they know because of my accent. So I think the key idea also from the statement, from the sentence, from the quote that you kind of translated into English, is that celebration is also a space that you can have in coaching where you come and acknowledge and celebrate what's going well as well. And I think, also it's a safe space for people to have a dialogue about, whereas in this aspect is going well, this other aspect, I might need some thinking time, some processing time, right? So I might need a sounding board. I might need someone to really, unpack this with me, why it's not working the way I wanted it to work, right? And so that's going back to that vision, right? Like current status to desired status, and how do we get to that desired status? So I feel coaching also provides that space. And I think I go back to highlighting that it's a safe space. It's a space where confidentiality, you abide to confidentiality unless there is a danger to the person or others. You abide to confidentiality. And it's important to know that it's non-evaluative. There's no judgment. So I think the beauty of the coaching space is that people can come and talk about anything that is on their mind that they need unpacking. And the beauty of that, I mean, when I think what I hear most people say is, it feels good to be listened to. It feels good. Like I always, after our coaching sessions, I just have a sense of relief. I have a sense of calmness. I feel like I can face the world better because, I was able to really be my full self, be authentic, open up, because I know there's no judgment. I can really say what is truly in my mind, whether it needs to change or not needs to change, but that is how I'm feeling. And there is this safe space to be able to have a dialogue on that. So I'm curious, what is coming up for you?
For me? When you say that?
Yeah, what in general, when you've been coached and the power of coaching for you?
Yeah. So I can speak to both sides to that. And I go back to the original question, which is in the good and the bad, right? So I feel that because there's two answers to that. Number one is as a CEO of this company, do I do coaching? Absolutely. And are things going well? Oh, sometimes they're up, sometimes they're down. Yet coaching is the way to navigate my daily life, let's say, and my daily issues, as well as when things are not going good or etc. So the answer to that is coaching just has become this sounding board, this time where I can have time to wind down and reflect on whatever is happening and come from a different place in the day-to-day life, right? So there's that. The other, when you ask me what happens for me when coaching, and this is, I go back to, I've heard this from our students multiple times that are navigating the world of becoming coaches. And one of the things that I hear multiple times is there is something magical that happens when you're able to sit in front of somebody and pay full attention and be fully present with that person in being with whatever's happening for them. And at the end of that session, that magic is there. Is the magic of really connecting with that individual. So that's what comes up for me when you say that.
Yeah, it's a magical space for sure.
Absolutely.
And that also
Yeah.
almost reminds me, one of my cohorts in one of the classes for coaching out of the box, one of the conversations I had with the students is what might be a metaphor that represents coaching. And that's a beautiful way to think about that it's also magic that happens there. And I feel like coaching is a gift to others because you're fully given the gift of being fully present. And all your attention is on that individual, and there is full acceptance. And you invite them their full self in the sense that they can really express whatever is in their heart and brain.
Perfect. All right. So I'm aware of the time. We got only a few more minutes left. Miriam, I really want to thank you for your time and for sharing your journey and your expertise. To me, you're a model of what can be done, going from 0 to 100 if you put your head down, your dedication to the industry. So it's really, really a gift and a pleasure to have you today and to share, this time together. So thank you so much, Miriam. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Also from the bottom of my heart, not only, I'm seeing thank you also in the webinar chat, but thank you to you and to Hallie and Stephanie, as well as all the attendees here today. Look forward to connecting in the future. If anybody has any follow-up questions, feel free to send it our way. And thank you again, and look forward to reconnecting again in the future.
Thank you, Miriam. And again, I do want to make sure that everybody has access to you and to how to connect with you, Miriam. So please, can you put on the chat, Stephanie or Hallie, Miriam's details so that anybody in the webinar can connect with her. So what would be the best way, Miriam, for anybody to connect with you?
LinkedIn is a good way, for sure.
Okay. So we'll post in the chat. We will be sharing this slide deck with everybody that's been on the webinar, so you'll have this information. Please reach out to Miriam at any time, or any of us. We'd be happy to connect with you. So thank you, Miriam. And so just to close up, I'd like just to share that we do have an upcoming programs. We have a fast track coming up here starting on May 3rd, next week. So if you're interested with that, please connect with us. We have the CAP class, which is the credentialing assessment class, that's starting on Tuesday, right? June 6th. Personal ground for coaching, that's starting on May 16th. It's an evening program. Excuse me, we have the coaching fundamentals starting on June 5th. Certified Diversity Coach Program starting next week as well. So yeah, if you're interested in any of these programs, please reach out to us. We'd be happy to chat, set up a call with Ellie, who is our director of sales. And then just to finish it off, I really appreciate everybody taking the time to be with us today and listening to Miriam, who is a wealth of information. And next, I would just want to make an announcement for our next webinar, which is next month. We'll be discussing the topic of to be or not to be credentialed. And is that really important or not? And yeah, Miriam is nodding her head. So I guess for Miriam, it was kind of important because she's an MCC. So please stay tuned. We will be sending out a mailing to everybody so that you know when that's happening. So thank you, everybody. And please, we stay open for a little bit. If you have any questions, the chat will be open. And thanks, everybody, for attending.